Hi everyone, my name is Brianne Van Buren, and I here have an occupational-based kit for how to make some good chocolate chip cookies. This is for my analysis course. I am an occupational therapy student at Midwestern University. I've put together this kit for anybody and everybody who wants to make a batch of chocolate chip cookies. I'm going to go through and kind of explain the objects we need, the ingredients we need, maybe some adaptations here and there, and go through the sequence of steps that we have according to the recipe. With that, let's get started. The first thing I want to point out is we want to make sure that the area that we're making our cookies has appropriate lighting, that the counter height is high enough for you or low enough for you, that you have enough space to kind of work at. Also, the space of the counter, if you're working in a really small area, it's going to be really hard to kind of like spread your stuff out and be able to see where things are and have some room to kind of mess up and spill. The temperature in the kitchen is probably going to increase. We're going to have the oven going, we're going to have some electricity with our beaters, and it's really important to have some good air ventilation. Anything that can decrease, if there's any potential burning, we don't want to burn anything, have the smoke detectors go off. So just make sure you have some good ventilation, you're not in too small of a space. Here I have my recipe. I wrote it all out. I found the recipe online and I'm using my computer to record this. So I will go through and read through the ingredients for what we need. I've already gathered them all, put them here. That is one thing that I've already done, but you're going to have to do in order to obtain your ingredients for this kit. The first thing we need is a stick of butter, 8 tablespoons. The next thing we need is some white sugar. We also have some light brown sugar. We're going to need some vanilla. We're going to need 1 egg. And we will need flour, all-purpose flour, bleached all-purpose flour. We're going to need some baking soda here. We're going to need some salt. Chocolate chips for our chocolate chip cookies. I'm going to follow the sequence of steps that the recipe gave us. And the first thing we want to do is make sure we wash our hands. So I'm going to wash my hands a second. I have a towel over here. So now that my hands are washed, we can do the first step. And the first step says to preheat the oven to 350 degrees. So my oven is right behind me. I'm just going to go approach my oven and set it to 350 degrees. The next step is we have to microwave the butter for 40 seconds so it softens and gets a little bit liquidy. So I'm going to unwrap the butter and then just let it kind of plop into a small bowl, and I'm going to put it in the microwave for 40 seconds. Okay, here I have my melted butter, and I'm already going to show you the first adaptation I had to make. Typically, you will mix everything in a big bowl, and as a grad student, the only big enough bowl that I had was a pot that you boil water in on the stove. But this works fine. I'm also going to point out, this is a hand blender, a hand mixer. I'm going to put 2 beaters in here later to mix the dough. I also grabbed a spoon to kind of scoop the cookie dough out at the end, a spatula to kind of scrape around the edges. I have a teaspoon and a tablespoon to measure our dry ingredients. And I also have a couple different sizes of cups here. I have a 1/3 cup, a 1/4 cup, and a 1 cup. So since this butter is melted, I'm going to pick it up, and be careful, it might be a little hot. So if it is hot, you can grab a towel and kind of reach into the microwave and grab it out with a towel. And I am going to just scrape this butter into my big bowl. Put my dirty bowl down, my spatula. And the next thing that the recipe says to do is to add both our white sugar and our brown sugar. So if I refer back to the ingredient list, it looks like I need a 1/2 cup of white sugar. So I will grab my white sugar, find my 1/2 cup, set my cup down on the counter, and if you have a container of sugar, you can kind of like scoop in like this and scoop the sugar out, kind of make it even, but I am going to pour mine. You kind of have to gauge what a good amount is. You don't want to have too much, you don't want to have not enough. So there's my 1/2 cup. Set my sugar to the side. The next thing we're going to do is open up our brown sugar. So brown sugar, we need a 1/4 cup of brown sugar. In my 1 cup, I can measure out a 1/4 cup because on the side it is measured on the side. So I'm going to kind of dump my brown sugar in here. Now, it's a little bit tricky for brown sugar because it always has to be kind of packed down. So I'm going to pour a little bit in there, and then I'm going to use my spoon also to kind of like pack that brown sugar down so I can really make sure I have enough. So once I get it packed down, I can kind of like look on the side and see if I have a 1/4 cup. I think I might even have a little bit too much. So I'm going to take a little bit out. This is a good example of making an adjustment. So once I kind of pat it down and I get it all packed, I know I have 1/2 cup, so I'm going to dump that in with my sugar and my butter. And this step now says that we need to cream our butter and sugars together. So I'm going to use this hand mixer and insert the beaters to the end. Another adaptation is if you have a stand mixer that can stand on your counter, this would be a lot easier instead of having to like rotate the bowl. I'll demonstrate this, but this needs to be plugged into the wall, and I'm just gonna kind of mix all my sugars and beat it together. And you really wanna be careful when you mix these. Start really slow, and then once it kind of gets blended, you can increase the speed a little bit. Another adaptation that some people might need to consider, if I have a hand that is broken or it's in a splint, and I really want to make these cookies for my kids after school, something you can do is to kind of hold the bowl between your forearm and your stomach, abdomen area. This way, instead of using your hand to grasp the handle or to grasp the side of the bowl, you can still hold the bowl still while you stir. So now that my butter and sugar is mixed, the next thing I have to do is add 2 more like wet ingredients, and that is my 1 egg and my vanilla. So the first thing I'm going to add is my 1 teaspoon of vanilla. I know this is the teaspoon. It says TSP on the top, and that stands for teaspoon. This teaspoon has something up here that you can shift up and down to kind of increase or decrease how much you're measuring. So if I want 1 teaspoon, I'm going to kind of scooch this all the way up, and I need to fill this up with vanilla. I have to pop the top open. And I'm going to hold and place this teaspoon over top of my wet ingredients just in case they spill. Slowly pour the vanilla into the teaspoon, and once you kind of get to the top, just go ahead and dump it in. You can set this teaspoon down, and you can close your vanilla, set that down, and the next thing we need is an egg. So eggs are kind of tricky to crack. What I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of hit it gently, but just hard enough so it cracks on the side of this bowl, and the goal is to not get any of the shell in the batter. And so now I'm going to, again, mix my butter and sugars with my egg and vanilla. So everything is mixed, all of my wet ingredients. If you are having a hard time gripping the handle of this, if you're using a hand beater like this, another option is to kind of put your towel around it and create more like a bigger handle to grasp onto. If it's maybe harder for you to grasp smaller objects, you don't have as much finger dexterity. So now the next thing I need to add is my flour, my baking soda, and my salt. So when I look up to the top again, I see that I need 1½ cups of flour. So I'm going to grab my flour, place it kind of right in front of me. It says I need 1½ cups, so I'm going to take my 1 cup, fill it all the way to the top, and just dump it right into my bowl. And then I need also a half. Take my 1/2 cup and measure out a 1/2 cup. And dump that in my bowl. And I can put the flour out of the way. The next thing it says I need is my 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. So I used this teaspoon for my vanilla earlier. I'm going to rinse this out. And then I'm going to take my towel and kind of dry this out, otherwise the baking soda will stick. I'm going to pick up my baking soda. It says I need a 1/2 teaspoon. So I'm going to take my teaspoon and move this down to where it says 1/2. And I have to hold my thumb on top of it so it doesn't move. And then scoop out a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda. Dump that in my bowl. The last thing I need is my salt. And if I look back up at the ingredient list, it says I need a 1/4 teaspoon of salt. This salt top has a pretty small silver kind of lid that you have to open up, so it's You better have some nails for it, so put your fingernail underneath it and then you can lift it up. And again, I'm going to use this same teaspoon that I have, and I need a 1/4 teaspoon. So when I move this down, you can see that it goes all the way down to 1/4 teaspoon right there. So I'm only going to fill this little part up with salt. And again, I'm going to hold this with one hand and then kind of pour with another hand. And once I have enough, just dump it in. Put my salt back. I'm going to mix these together too. Again, be careful when you mix because all the dry ingredients, you don't want it to poof all over your kitchen. So go ahead and start really slow, kind of work your way mixing it in. Okay, once you have all of the wet and dry ingredients mixed in, according to this recipe too, it says that the dough should be a little bit crumbly. So I will show you what that looks like. Kind of like that. And the last thing we have to add are our chocolate chips to make the chocolate chip cookies. And the recipe says I need 3/4 cup. So again, I'm going to select the big cup that I was using because on the side I can tell here it goes 1/4, 1/2, and 3/4. So I'm gonna fill this cup up to the line, and I'm going to again use my mixer and kind of mix the chocolate chips into the dough. Okay, and it looks like the beaters here have a little extra dough on them, so I'm just gonna grab a little knife and kind of clean those off so I can get all the dough in the bowl. While I'm doing this, I am noticing that this is requiring some endurance. For people who are not used to standing a lot, this is something that might be a little difficult. If you need to stand for a long period of time, taking a break to sit down every now and then is not a bad idea, whatever makes you most comfortable. Okay, so now that I have my cookie dough, I'll show you what it looks like. Ooh. Last thing I'm going to do is grab my cooking sheet to scoop the cookie dough out, roll it into some balls, and place it on the cookie sheet. And that's what this is. I'm just gonna place this right in front of me on the counter. So the reason why I grabbed that spoon earlier, I know I used it to kind of mash down my brown sugar, but this is where you're going to kind of scoop the cookie dough onto the spoon like so. And really, it's kind of, if you want bigger cookies, you could scoop more cookie dough out. If you want smaller cookies, less cookie dough. And you're gonna place it in your hands, and this is why we washed our hands earlier. And you're gonna kind of roll it back and forth. And again, if you only have one hand, honestly, you can even put it on your cookie sheet and kind of roll it like this a little bit. If you want to put a little flour down to prevent the stickiness. And once you have a good ball of cookie dough, you place it on the cookie sheet, like so. And we're gonna put 12 of these on here. Okay, so now I've rolled 12 balls of cookie dough, and the next thing the recipe says to do is to place this in the oven, and the oven should already be on 350 degrees because we preheated it before we started the process. And we have to kind of like rotate ourselves in the kitchen. My oven is directly behind me. Your oven might be around the counter or it might be under where you're working, but be careful, it's gonna be hot when you open it. Slowly open it, place these on the top shelf, and set a timer for 9 minutes. So my cookies are in the oven. I set a timer for 9 minutes, and I'm just going to wait until the timer goes off. The recipe, it gives you a little bit of wiggle room to adjust or adapt. If you are not happy with how your cookies look at 9 minutes, it could be 9 minutes. You could set the timer for another minute or two, and however you like them, you can take them out of the oven using your oven mitts and let them cool on top of the oven. So my cookies are done. My timer went off. So I'm going to grab my oven mitts. I have 2 of them. And when you open my oven, again, be careful. It could be a lot of heat up in your face. Don't want to singe those eyebrows. Remove the cookie sheet and place it right up here on top of my stove to kind of cool off. And again, if you want them a little darker, you can set your timer for another minute. I'm pretty happy with how mine turned out, so I'm just gonna let them cool. So I have a lot of leftover cookie dough, and that is great. Don't eat all of it because there's a raw egg in here and that will make you sick. But keep making those cookies just like we did previously until the cookie dough is gone. And clean up Unfortunately, that requires putting all of your ingredients back in your cupboard or your refrigerator, wherever you keep them, washing the dishes that you used. If you have a dishwasher, you can open the dishwasher the same way you open the oven, load that up with all your dirty dishes, and go ahead and run your dishwasher. I hope your cookies are delicious. Thank you so much for joining me in my kitchen, and I hope you make cookies every day.